We're in the middle of lockdown right now, and both my partner and I are having to work from home. My home office door doesn't close very well, and so that we don't disturb each other, I'm going to fix it. Now, I imagine there's quite a few of you as well in a similar situation, and as you can't call a handyman to come in and do the job for you, I thought I would show you how I go about problem solving and fixing the door, and I hope by the end of this you'll have the confidence to have a go at fixing your own door. Welcome to Lockdown DIY for Beginners. Here are some of the possible causes. Perhaps the hinges are loose, which will cause the door to sag. The door will then rub on the frame or on the floor, or it will stop the catch engaging properly. The hinges will usually be loose because either a pilot hole wasn't drilled before putting in the screws and the wood is split, or the hinges are being put under too much strain, perhaps because of a poorly fitted door, and as a result the screws are being sheared out. If the door is moved, so if it's bowed, twisted, expanded or contracted, that might cause an improper fit within the frame or the catch to stop working properly. There may be other obstacles. For example, if the screw heads are too large or not recessed enough in the hinge, it will stop the hinge closing properly. Or a heavy-handed paint job with too many layers of paint will cause friction and also will stop the door closing properly. It's also possible that the door was fitted badly in the first place, maybe too tight or too loose, or the catch is in the wrong place. The problem I've got here is that if you close the door, it springs back open again. And if you press really hard, it will stay shut, but it's under tension, which isn't ideal for the hinges. So let's try and work out where the problem originates. Can you see there's daylight at the top? As you go further down towards the bottom, that gets less and less, and then right at the very bottom, I don't know if you can see that, it looks to be touching there. And I think that is what is holding the door back. So that suggests that if there's an even gap on the hinge side, but the gap on the other side is getting smaller and smaller towards the bottom, that tells me that the door is probably twisted. So I can either take wood or paint off this very bottom corner here, or I'm going to have to start shaving into the door here, or maybe a bit of both. I don't know if you can see that there. So I'm going to start with the easier of the two, which is taking paint off this bottom corner here. So I'm going to have to use my chisel in reverse, find the right angle, and then start moving down to remove some of that excess. We are going to paint back over this, but we've just got too much paint and a little bit of wood, which is causing the problem. So find the right angle until it starts to bite into the wood and move down. At some point I will have to teach you how to sharpen your chisels as well, but one step at a time. So this is my pencil mark just here, and I'm going to keep working that area there down, because that seems to be where the problem is. So I've removed quite a lot of wooden paint, and you can see now that the door closes with limited effort, and the last part is to neaten that up there. Now, if you've got a problem with the wood being not very smooth, don't try and paint out the problem, otherwise you're just going to build up layer and layer and layer, and we'll be back where we were in the first place. So I'm going to have to tidy this up with a little bit of sandpaper on a sanding block. This is the only thing I've got with me, which is for a sculpture, but it will have to do, and I've put a bit of 120, which is quite coarse. It's not ultra coarse, but it's probably about right for what we're going to do here. And all we're going to do is just try and sand that edge and get it a bit neater and smoother, and also on this side as well, just so that these marks, you don't see them as much. Now, it's still not perfect, and you can see on the hinge side of the door there are these white paint marks, which are little clues, which probably most people won't have because this was a terrible paint job, but those are clues that there's paint catching when it closes. So obviously they closed the door when the paint was drying, and in these places it's raised. So potentially I could go all the way down the door and remove some of those paint globs, but what I'd rather do is show you how to fix the door by moving the hinge, because that's something that many of you may have to tackle depending on what the cause of the problem is. Now, on closer inspection of the frame, or technically this part's called the door jamb, I can see where the problem lies. This section here is 30mm and the door itself is 34mm. So when they fitted the hinge in the first place, they've put the hinge too far out in that direction. Ordinarily the hinge should come up to the knuckle. Okay, so you can see that there's not a huge amount of wood that we can fix into here, because I'd like to move the hinge that way. Can you see the arrow I've penciled in? So the other option is I can move the door in that direction. So this part of the hinge, I can bring it in this direction. Can you see that if I don't get my finger in the way? And the door will go in the opposite direction. And given that that is such a mess on the jamb side of the door, that's what I'm going to do. So what I've done now is I've sellotaped a bit of thin veneer, which I know is 1/2 mil thick, to this ruler, which is about 1 mil thick, and that is butted up against the hinge just here, and I'm going to scribe a line just here which corresponds to where the hinge is. Okay, and this is going to act as my stop, so I know where to move the hinge to. Okay, you don't need to go too deep as long as you can see it, but ideally with a scalpel or a craft knife. That way you've got a thin line to work to. If you use a thick pencil, it means that you're not going to be able to be as precise as you'd like. And if you're not precise, the door will hang at an odd angle, and then you'll probably be chasing your tail all day. Now I've put some books under the door to support it, and as you can see I've removed the first hinge, or at least I have on the door, and I'm going to do the same with the second hinge, whilst making sure that I've got a good hold of the door and it doesn't fall. So I've now taken the door off. I've got it resting on a couple of books to prop it up and to protect the handle, and as you can see here, I've prepared some matchsticks which I've whittled so that they've got a point, and I've cut them down to about the length of the screw, and they're going to be plugging the existing holes where the screws were before. Now if they're a bit loose, if you've got bigger holes, you may need to tap a second one in. You want them to be wedged in reasonably well. I'm leaving them proud because I want to trim them later. Better to have them proud than under the surface. Remove any excess glue and then leave to dry, well, for at least an hour. A couple of hours would be good. That's now glued for a couple of hours, and I'm going to flush off the top of the matchsticks with a chisel. Shouldn't require too much work. Now you could also, if you want, have a go just by using the sandpaper. I've probably left this a little bit too high up. We should still get away with it. Sand it flush with a bit of sandpaper there. And now we're ready to re-drill some holes. And now I'm going to reposition the hinge. That's where it was before. You can just about see that line there where I've marked. So that's where it was before. I've also got the scribe line just there. Okay, you should see that. That is where it was originally. And I'm going to move it forward to that second line. Okay. Now, in an ideal world, you will check that it's also square, but I'm pretty sure I've got that in the right place. So what I'm going to do now is mark with a pencil first all three, because I want to be pretty accurate with this. And then with a brad awl, or in my case a compass because I haven't got a brad awl at home, I'm going to mark where I want that hole to be, right in the middle obviously. Be careful not to go into where the matchstick was, or the heart of the matchstick. I'm kind of halfway in and halfway out now. So I've got the point where my pilot hole is going to be, and now I'm just going to pause for a second, and I'm now going to drill the pilot hole, being very careful to get the drill bit in the right place. Drilling perpendicular. Now the pilot hole has been drilled with a 3mm drill bit, and I have a 4mm screw. So the 4mm is the width of the central section, the shank or the core, plus the thread itself. So across its width it is 4mm. The only part that's doing any real work there is the thread, and you will split the wood if you don't manage to clear the central section and allow for that. All you want to do is have it so that the thread, that 1mm to 1.5 mm, is biting into the wood. So a 2.5, 3mm drill bit will be perfectly fine for a pilot hole with a 4mm screw. I've now replaced the screws top and bottom, and I'm going to remove the books from the bottom underneath the door. So it's the moment of truth. Will it close properly? Bingo. Job done. As you can see, I'm a happy chappy now because my door closes properly, but that might not have solved your problem. So if your door is too large for the aperture, you may be able to shave some wood off the edge of the door, or recess the hinge a little bit more. You can recess the hinge out of the door or out of the frame itself, and you do that with a chisel. You would shave the wood off the door, ideally on the hinge side of the door, because you don't have any catches or anything there. Otherwise, on the other side of the door, you'd have to remove the catch, shave the wood off, and then reposition it, which is a lot more work. So plane any wood off the hinge side of the door, and hopefully it will then fit. Now, if it's the opposite, that the door has shrunk, you will need to pack out the hinges with maybe a little bit of cardboard, just so much so that the catch re-engages again and the door closes and stays closed. So if you've made it this far in my video, then congratulations for your endurance. I really hope it was useful. I am slowly expanding my YouTube channel, where you'll find some videos about some of my sculptural furniture and some how-tos on fine furniture making. You'll also find more information about me on different social media. Once the social distancing measures are relaxed again, I will be continuing with my fine furniture making courses in my workshop, and you can find a bit more information here. But in the meantime, if you are interested in some training via the internet, then please get in touch and we can discuss some remote learning via Zoom or WhatsApp. Thanks for your time, and feel free to like, subscribe, or leave me a comment.